Herbert W. Armstrong, The World Tomorrow program, production number 80C-01, taped on January 5th, produced on February 4th, 1980. Copyright by the Worldwide Church of God, 1980.
Now, the man that I did speak to is a vice chairman, and he was contemporary with Zhou Enlai and Mao Zedong, and has actually fought in the war, and he was right up at the top all the way along. And I was privileged to have 1 hour with him in person. He told me their objectives. He said a lot about the Russian objectives, which of course he was not in favor of. And then I told him what is going to happen in Europe, in the United Europe, and he should shake his head, and I said, I don't expect you to believe me now. You wait, and when it happens, remember I told you. And he isn't going to have to wait too long, and then maybe he'll believe what I said. And then I told him about the coming kingdom of God. And it's going to be one nation to rule all the nations of the earth, and that is the gospel and the only gospel of Jesus Christ.
The World Tomorrow. The Worldwide Church of God presents The World Tomorrow with Herbert W. Armstrong. A mysterious, slumbering giant is just now awakening to Western civilization. China, our world's most populous nation, is beginning a quest for knowledge and technology, with a new leadership beckoning those with understanding to share. Herbert W. Armstrong, founder of the Ambassador International Cultural Foundation, an arm of the Worldwide Church of God, has formed relationships with dozens of kings, prime ministers, and other heads of state during the past decade. His renown as an ambassador without portfolio for world peace resulted in a governmental invitation for his most dramatic visit to date to ancient Peking, capital of the People's Republic of China. Upon his arrival, Mr. Armstrong and his entourage were transported to the Chinese State House, where they were provided hospitality for the remainder of their stay. The following evening, a banquet was convened in Mr. Armstrong's honor at the Peking Duck Restaurant. 400 people attended, including many top government officials and numerous educators from Chinese universities. Mr. Armstrong was warmly introduced to an expectant audience by Mr. Yamashita, a senior member of Japan's Diet. Addressing a predominantly communist audience, Herbert Armstrong announced God's soon-coming intervention in world affairs.
All of the troubles in this world have come from living the wrong way, having a wrong attitude toward ourselves, toward others, toward one another, and we're going to come to the time of world peace. We're going to have a utopia on earth. People will laugh when I say the word utopia. Why should it be impossible? Why should we not have it? All we have to do is live the way we ought to, and all of us are going to be doing that, and in our time, in this generation. Now, I have the pleasure to announce to you tonight, not to try to convince you, but to announce to you that what some of the leading scientists say is our only hope is going to happen, and that unseen hand is going to appear, and we are going to have world peace in our time.
The following evening, the Great Hall of the People, China's official government building, was the site of another banquet. From this spacious dining hall, Mr. Armstrong powerfully addressed ambassadors representing 76 nations, as well as Chinese officials and their wives. Again, he delivered the good news of the coming kingdom of God. Mr. Armstrong was next honored by a personal meeting with China's Vice Chairman Tan. Their animated discussion centered on world politics, including mankind's ultimate future. Not only do such meetings in the name of world peace aid in drawing the nations involved closer together, they also carry great prophetic significance. In a recent address from his Tucson office, Herbert W. Armstrong previewed the 1980s as revealed through Bible prophecy.
The 70s have been a momentous decade, but the 70s are now behind us. I was amazed last night on television. I saw a group, a listing of the prominent people that were so well known. Many of them were celebrities from Hollywood and so on, but who had died during the decade of the 70s. And it's amazing. I didn't know that all of them were dead yet. But it makes you realize how many things can happen in a decade. Now we're in the 80s. This may be the decade that will end this present world, and I hope so. I think we should all be praying, "Thy kingdom come, and God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Before we look into the immediate future, I want you to notice a few other things and what happened in the decade of the 70s. I'd like to have you notice now something back here in the 10th chapter of the book of Revelation. Now, verse 11, the last verse in the chapter. "And he said unto me, Thou must prophesy or preach again before many peoples and nations and tongues," that is, nations speaking different languages, "and kings." Now he was to go to kings. That hadn't been done before. Who is that speaking about? The time is just before the seventh angel. After the time of the sixth angel, and at the seventh trump, Christ will come. So it's holding up the coming of Christ until someone, this is not talking about ancient history, this is talking about us now. It's talking about someone right now. Who could it be? God has held up world events and has deliberately held them up until someone goes not only into many other Gentile nations speaking different languages, but also to many kings. Brethren, let me tell you something. In the decade of the 70s, beginning in 1970, I have probably spoken to more kings, emperors, presidents, and prime ministers and heads of government than hardly any other man in the world. I'm quite sure I've spoken to more than Henry Kissinger did. And I have been invited. I have not just forced my way in, because you don't do that, you know. But I have been invited. Now, I was just recently invited by the heads of government of the largest nation on earth to visit China. And I was the first world leader from a religious